No one saw it coming. Not even her. The instant the courtroom doors creaked open, a shiver of tension coursed through the room like a charge of electricity. Each whispered word sounded louder than usual, and each eye seemed to bore directly through her. Meri Brown was frozen in place, yet her heart was pounding like a drum in a parade. The rich wood of the courtroom shone under the bright lights, but nothing could dazzle her to the choking pressure bearing down on her chest. This wasn't an ordinary trial. This was her life picked apart in public, bit, by individuals who didn't even know the whole truth. And, with a resounding thud, the prosecutor slammed a thick folder onto the front desk in the courtroom. The room echoed, reverberating off the walls as it loudly called out for attention. All heads turned, all cameras focused, all whispering died. For an instant, Meri had the sight of time itself stopping. Meri Brown is accused of concealing millions in family wealth, the prosecutor announced, his voice sharp and unflinching, cutting through the charged atmosphere like a blade. Gasps ripped through the room. Cameras flashed incessantly, their piercing lights filming her every emotion: fear, shock, incredulity. The Brown family, previously depicted as a picture of togetherness in their practice of polygamy, now sat broken and speechless. Some faces were pale, some were frozen in disbelief. It was clear that no one had anticipated this, not even her own sisters, not even Cody. For the first time in years, the media frenzy and the scrutiny of the public gaze were no longer distant realities. They were sitting right next to her, watching every twitch, every reaction. Mary's mind spun wildly. How could this be happening? She had always been scrupulous. Every account, every decision, every detail double-checked and rechecked and triple-checked. She had played by the rules, remained truthful, and worked day and night to defend her family. And here she was, facing accusations of betrayal, an offense she had never so much as thought of. Someone was attempting to destroy her. But why now? And who? Questions stacked on top of one another, and not one had any answers. Her attorney, noticing that she was panicking, drew near and spoke softly to her in caution and strategy. We must remain calm and present the facts. Concentrate on your side. Don't let them see you tremble. Meri smiled faintly, but within a tempest was brewing. She could sense all the eyes in the courtroom on her, all the flashes from the cameras searing her fear into public consciousness. The judge's gavel came crashing down, calling for silence. The loud report of the wood stung her, but it also brought her to attention. The time for hysteria was past. Now was the time to plan, to struggle, and to live. The prosecution started presenting the evidence. A web of numbers, dates, and transactions that created a picture she couldn't identify. They spoke with certainty, with power, positioning her as the mastermind behind an intentional concealment of enormous amounts of family money. Every sentence was deliberately phrased, designed to convince the jury of her guilt even before she got to say a word. Meri felt the room closing in on her. She could hear the distant scratching of pens, the soft rustling of papers, and the muffled whispers of people attempting to make sense out of the mess. Each piece of information they offered seemed to assault not only her money, but her integrity, her identity, her very being. She recalled all the sleepless nights she had endured, reading through each account, verifying each transaction. She had tried her best to keep the family's business transparent, so nothing was ever mishandled. She recalled the late nights, the tension, the worry, the sense of always having to be flawless. And now it was being manipulated into something evil and turned into proof of her crime. Her hands were damp, but she kept them tidy in her lap, telling herself to breathe. One slow, deliberate breath, and another. She had to concentrate. Every second she allowed fear to grip her was potentially something to be used against her. Every flash of doubt in her eyes could be read as guilt. The media cameras did not relent. Flashbulbs burst like firework, each of them etching her terror on innumerable headlines, waiting to be picked apart, analyzed, and propagated throughout the web. Her trial was now no longer about her, but about reputation, public opinion, and survival. The pressure was overwhelming, and amidst this chaos, Meri discovered an odd clarity. This was her time. If she could make it through, if she could resist the like of such orchestrated disorder, she could withstand anything. As the prosecution continued, Meri began noticing subtle cues. A hesitation here, a misstep there, small cracks in the narrative that suggested this story might not be as airtight as it appeared. Someone had created a perfect storm of confusion, but perhaps they had overlooked something, some detail that could save her. Her mind raced, searching for patterns, inconsistencies, any thread she could pull to unravel this web. Her attorney huddled in closer again. Stay calm, remember. Let the facts speak for themselves. But be prepared to debunk the inconsistencies. We will battle this. Meri nodded once more. Her jaw clenched. Fear was still there, eating away at her from within, but so was resolve. I will not be broken, she thought. I will not be destroyed. The judge's eyes scanned the courtroom, taking in each person there, each strained face, each camera aimed at Meri, and then he spoke. His voice authoritative and commanding. This court will hear the evidence and testimony. All parties are reminded that justice takes patience, clarity, and honesty. Proceed. The prosecution went on, delving deeper into the thorny labyrinth of suspected financial fraud. Each figure they produced seemed calculated to confuse, to overwhelm, to terrify. But Meri did not break. She clung to the facts, to the sequence of events, to the truth she was certain existed. Somewhere, buried in plain sight, lay the evidence that would vindicate her. Beyond the courtroom, reporters whispered, cameras were at every turn, and social media was already in flames with rumor. In here, however, Meri could sense a resolve building. She might be trapped in a tempest, but she was not helpless. Each accusation, each angry stare, each burst of light would be confronted by her determination to establish the truth. And so the first day of the trial dragged on, and Meri Brown sat at the center of it all, a woman who was about to face the unimaginable, looking down at betrayal, scrutiny, and public judgment. Her heart continued to pound, mind continued to whirl, but beneath fear was a spark. She would not let this storm consume her. She would fight, and she would uncover the truth. No one expected it to happen, but she was not going to let them bring her down without a fight. The courtroom appeared to darken around Meri, the air thick with tension, practically smothering. Each corner of the room reverberated with whispers. Each eye appeared to scan for fissures in her facade. The prosecution had already seeded doubt, and now they were watering that seed with unrelenting accuracy. Charts, bank statements, and perfectly constructed spreadsheets lay before the jury, each a brick aimed directly at her credibility. Meri's chest tightened as she listened. They spoke of hidden accounts, unexplained transactions, and secret investments. A labyrinth of financial intrigue designed to make her appear deceitful. But she knew better. Every figure, every claim had a context that they were deliberately ignoring. And yet, as the evidence piled up, she felt the creeping fear that the jury, unfamiliar with the nuances, might believe every carefully spun lie. She recalled endless late nights in her home office, sorting through papers and ensuring that the family finances were above board. She recalled the stress, the headaches, the terror of getting even a small thing wrong. And now, those careful nights were being turned into a story of deceit. Her attorney leaned in, whispering softly enough for her to discern. There's still hope, Meri. We have something they don't. The truth. And someone is stepping forward to reveal it. The words were a lifeline, but also a source of new tension. Who could possibly have waited this long to come forward? And why now, at the peak of the storm? Meri's mind raced, trying to anticipate the next twist, the next turn in this nightmare. The suspense was unbearable. The jury, on the other hand, appeared fascinated by the theater. A few scribbled madly, others sat quietly, eyes upon the papers, as though they might somehow magically provide answers. The cameras of the media persisted in their incessant flashing, each click capturing every twitch of uncertainty, every nervous gesture, every faint trace of fear. The courtroom had become a theater, and Meri, reluctantly, was the actress in a play she never read. Occasionally her eyes would glance toward her family. Faces she had loved and trusted were now marred with doubt and confusion. They longed to believe that she was innocent, she knew, but the gravity of the accusations weighed upon them as well. The tension wasn't limited to the courtroom. It was in her veins, in the silence of her relatives, in the unflattering glare of cameras that seemed to weigh her soul. As the prosecution presented more and more of the so-called evidence, Meri spotted little inconsistencies. A mislabeled date, a misplaced document, a signature that was just a trifle too perfect. Tiny fissures in the polished veneer of the prosecution's case. Her heartbeat accelerated. Could these tiny strands hold the key to untangling the whole web of deceit? Her attorney noticed her and nodded discreetly, an unspoken message. Stay calm, stay concentrated, and let the truth out. Meri drew a slow, stabilizing breath. She must be accurate. Every gesture, every word, every look counted now. One misstep would weigh against her. One hesitation would imprison her. And then the rumor of hope, a quiet, long-circulating rumor among court personnel. A witness, one with knowledge of the true financial reports, was set to give testimony. This individual could reveal the manipulations and dispel the confusion. There was also doubt, however. Would the testimony be sufficient? Could the jury be convinced after hours of artfully crafted allegations? Meri's mind flashed to the possibilities. If the witness was genuine, if the evidence could be presented clearly, the truth might finally have its day. But if it was a trick, a setup, or another manipulation, the consequences could be devastating. The tension wrapped around her like a vice, squeezing, urging her to prepare for both relief and disaster. She recalled the many hours she spent talking to her attorney, each repetition playing out scenarios, conjuring up attacks and defenses. All what-ifs had been weighed, all sides examined, but the vagaries of human feeling, the unpredictability of jurors, the constant scrutiny of the media made everything seem tenuous. Meri's gaze drifted to the clock. Each second seemed to stretch impossibly long, a reminder that in this courtroom, time itself was an opponent. Every tick was a test of endurance, every minute a battle to remain composed, every hour a push to cling to the truth amidst a sea of deception. Her mind did stray for an instant to the betrayal that had led her here. Someone who was close, someone she trusted had planned this hell. The notion was nearly intolerable. Could anyone in this room possibly comprehend the scope of that hurt? Could anyone possibly grasp how alone it was to be accused by the people she had worked to save? But in the darkness of doubt, a flame of determination flared. Meri saw that fear had the power to freeze her, but determination had the power to set her free. She would confront the allegations directly. She would walk through this web of lies, and she would battle to regain her truth. The first day of testimony was through, and the burden of suspense hung suspended like mist in the courtroom. Cameras caught the crowd milling out, whispers of rumor lingering in the corridors. Meri lingered for a moment, alone with her attorney, looking back on the struggle just begun. "This isn't over," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "But they haven't seen the real me yet." Her lawyer put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The true story is coming, and when it arrives, no one will be able to overlook it." As they exited the courthouse, Meri sensed the restraint of the day give way to a sense of purpose. The storm had broken, the shadows had fallen, but in the midst of the turmoil, she had discovered a small but fierce resolve. The secrets that were employed against her were going to be put to the test. The shadows that hung over her may now be pierced by the light of truth. And somewhere deep within, Meri realized the suspense was not merely a test of her patience. It was a test of her courage, her intelligence, and her determination to survive. In the world of lies and betrayal, only those who confront the shadows with courage can find the light. The courtroom was charged with an almost intolerable tension. All eyes were fixed on the door, as a figure slowly entered the back, carrying a folder that weighed more heavily than the weight of the accusations themselves. A silence fell over the room, murmurs dying on the spot as the stranger moved towards the stand. Who was this individual, and why had they appeared exactly when they did? Meri's heart skipped a beat, hope and fear clashing in her chest. The stranger hesitated, glanced about the court, and in a soft, even voice remarked, "I have evidence that the actual perpetrator tampered with the accounts. I am here to tell the truth." For an instant no one breathed. The judge's eyes narrowed, as if trying to decipher the motives of the witness. The prosecutor's confident smirk wavered just a fraction, a small crack in his otherwise flawless facade. The jury leaned in, knowing the story of the trial might soon be turned upside down. Meri's pulse raced. Could this witness be the key to unraveling the false story that had been constructed so meticulously against her? She tried to steady herself, but every second felt stretched, every heartbeat loud in her ears. The witness opened the folder, showing a series of emails, bank statements, and private messages. As they testified, laying out each one of them with accuracy, the courtroom appeared to suspend its breath. Each document spoke a story that disputed the prosecution's assertions and pointed towards someone else entirely. Mary's eyes widened as the patterns became clear. Dates didn't match, transactions had been altered, and signatures had been forged. The evidence was damning, but not against her. It was damning against someone she had trusted, someone who had orchestrated this elaborate scheme to frame her. The prosecutor attempted to confront the witness, challenging their credibility and motives. "Why are you coming forward now?" he asked. "How do we know this is real?" The witness did not shy away from his eyes. "Because the truth cannot hide forever." They spoke resolutely. "I waited until I was sure that the evidence could not be disregarded anymore, until I could provide it in a manner that would finally expose the manipulation." Gasps and whispers swept through the court. Cameras flashed once more, recording each gaping expression of shock, each spark of incredulity. The Brown family remained motionless, lips slightly open, as the tale they believed they understood began to fall apart before their very eyes. Meri experienced a mix of relief and fresh fear. Relief because she could now visualize the way to establishing her innocence. Fear because the betrayal was more profound than she had ever conceived. This was no easy mistake. Someone had strategized this meticulously, biding their time to catch the best moment to strike. And now, with the testimony of the witness, the true depth of that betrayal was emerging. She whispered to her lawyer, hardly heard above the tension, "Be quiet, Meri. Let the evidence do the talking. They can't refute what's in those papers." Meri nodded, attempting to concentrate on the elucidation the witness's evidence presented. She recognized that the courtroom had shifted from being a setting of accusation into a platform for revelation. Each paper, each word of testimony, was a tool to fight against the deceptions which had imperiled her life. The witness wrapped up by stating, "All of this leads to one individual, someone who fudged the financial records and attempted to ruin Meri Brown's reputation. The truth is finally transparent." The ensuing silence was almost palpable. Even the judge appeared stunned, the gravity of the revelation hanging over the courtroom like a thick fog. The prosecutor's air of confidence had been replaced with a grim understanding that the case was only just beginning, and a long way from as airtight as he had made it out to be. Meri slowly exhaled, sensing the strain in her chest relax. The storm raged far from being over, but the initial rays of hope were breaking through. The witness had opened a door that would hopefully now lead to the truth, to justice, and to her redemption. Looking around the courtroom, she could see the jury's reactions change. Confusion yielded to curiosity, skepticism to interest. They were being shown a part of the story that had been concealed, a layer under the charges that could not be ignored. Meri's thoughts raced. The betrayal was painful, yes, but now she had a chance to fight back, to reclaim her narrative and to expose the deception that had threatened to destroy her. Every fiber of her being focused on the next steps, on preparing for the challenges ahead, on ensuring that the truth would finally prevail. For the first time since the trial had started, there was a glimmer of confidence in Meri. The storm raged on, the tension was palpable, and the courtroom still had secrets hidden behind it. But now she possessed an arsenal that would not be overlooked. Irrefutable evidence of her innocence and the revelation of the real criminal. In the darkness of lies, a single brave voice can shine with the truth. The courtroom was charged with an electric atmosphere, all eyes on the drama unfolding. The testimony of the witness had already rocked the foundation of the prosecution's case, and now the entire enormity of the betrayal was about to be exposed. Meri sat tense-lipped, hands gripped together, heart racing in her chest, as the evidence was exposed. The emails, secretly obtained bank statements, and private messages painted a picture too horrible to deny. Every disclosure hit like a sledgehammer, leaving no question. Someone who was close to Meri, someone she had trusted absolutely, had arranged all this. Every spurious transaction, every forged document, every deceptive account had been so clearly staged that it clearly pointed to her as the culprit. The discovery cut deeper than she could possibly have envisioned. Her mind whirled as she pieced together the clues. Late-night sessions, hushed tones, and subtle manipulation, all aimed at deflecting attention from the real culprit. It wasn't mere financial sabotage. It was a personal assault on her integrity, her character, and the very trust she had earned over the years. The betrayal was not theoretical. It was concrete, close, and heart-wrenching. The prosecution attempted desperately to regain the initiative, challenging the witness's integrity, making fingers and implying ulterior motives. But every such attempt floundered against the mound of evidence. The jury leaned forward in rapt attention, mesmerized by the unfolding drama. Each paper, each letter, each message painted a picture that could not be refuted. Meri was innocent, and the actual culprit had been playing a fool's game all along. Mary's eyes filled with a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. Anger at the person who had betrayed her so completely, sadness for the trust that had been shattered, and relief that finally, after so many sleepless nights and moments of doubt, the truth was coming to light. The courtroom was hushed, except for the measured reading of papers and the occasional whisper of incredulity. Cameras popped, snapping every shocked expression, every gasp, every tear. The Brown family were frozen, as the truth slowly revealed itself to them. Their world, so painstakingly built, had been founded on deceptions, and the one person they trusted most had nearly destroyed Meri. Her attorney breathed softly. "Hold on, Meri. They can't dispute this. The truth is inescapable." Meri nodded, white-knuckling the armrest. She felt the load of all the accusations settle a little lighter, displaced by a soft steel resolve. She had been cheated, yes, but now she had the authority to take back her narrative. The witness's last words shook the room like a thunderclap. "All evidence points to one person, someone who tampered with financial records, constructed deceptions, and tried to destroy Meri Brown's life. The truth cannot be hidden any longer." The room was filled with a collective gasp. Faces went white, mouths dropped open, and the air seemed to hum with shock. The judge stopped, fiddling with his glasses, his gaze sweeping the room, drinking in the full effect of the disclosure. Even the prosecutor's bluff exterior had cracked, replaced by a moment's doubt and uncertainty. Mary's chest tightened as the betrayal settled in fully. The person responsible had been someone she had considered an ally, a confidant. The shock of that realization was almost too much to bear, yet beneath the pain, a new strength emerged. She would not allow this betrayal to define her. She would face it, confront it, and rise above it. The jury, once tense and doubting, now appeared to change. Evidence was unambiguous, the narrative clear, and the innocence of Meri Brown unmistakable. Whispers of shock circulated among them, the slight nods and side glances communicating the truth that was finally surfacing. Meri breathed slowly, experiencing a freedom she hadn't believed possible mere hours before. The storm had not yet subsided, but the first light of understanding was breaking through. She looked into the eyes of her family. Some were regretful, others confused, but all now comprehended that the woman they had questioned was the one who had been holding steadfast in reality all along. The betrayal had been shattering, but in revealing it, the road to redemption and justice opened up. Meri understood that getting through this ordeal wasn't simply about clearing her own name. It was about restoring her strength, her faith in herself, and her resilience against deceit. As the courtroom came to order, the weight of the betrayal hovered like a storm cloud overhead, but alongside that was an inevitability. Truth always came out eventually, however well it had been concealed. And today, in the same courtroom, truth had started to shine. Betrayal can shatter trust, but truth can mend and set justice free. The courtroom was hushed, the kind of hush that weighed on every soul in the room. The air felt loaded, pregnant with expectation, as the jury came in after deliberating for hours. Meri Brown sat stiff as a board, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, heart racing like a drum against her ribcage. Each tick of the clock, each step of the feet, sent her heart galloping faster. Truth time had finally come. Her brain whirled, reliving every second of the trial. The jaw-dropping charges, the incessant cross-examination, the late-night worry, and then the sensational appearance of the unknown witness. The proof had been irrefutable, the deception revealed in painful detail, but now the final decision was in the hands of 12 strangers whose verdict could either wreck her or heal her whole. The judge stood, his face serious as he spoke to the court. "Ladies and gentlemen, have you reached a verdict?" One of the jurors nodded, and the foreman stood. "We have, Your Honor." Mary's breath caught. The world seemed to tilt.
the courtroom fading into a blur, the faces around her, her family, the prosecution, the witnesses, all waited, some tense, some anxious, some silently praying. Her stomach twisted with a mixture of dread and hope. The foreperson began to speak, each word measured, deliberate. We, the jury, find the defendant. Meri clutched the armrest of her chair, knuckles tight, as though her own strength might hold her steady in the tempest of suspense. The words that came next appeared to ring off the walls of the courtroom, resonating within her breast. Not guilty. A wave of relief washed over her like a tidal wave. Her knees almost buckled, and she took a hard, shuddery breath to firm herself up. Tears stung the corners of her eyes, but they were tears of freedom, of vindication, of survival.
The tempest that had threatened to blow her to pieces had finally spent itself, and she stood triumphant in the ruins of betrayal. The courtroom erupted, whispers, gasps, and flashes of cameras capturing the moment. Her family rose slowly, some faces filled with regret for the doubt they had harbored, some with awe at her resilience. Mary's eyes swept across the room, lingering on each person who had been part of this ordeal. She had faced the unimaginable, and now she was free. But even at this time of victory, the bitterness of betrayal remained. The individual who had sought to destroy her had been exposed, and the truth had separated her from the darkness of lies. She understood that although she had been cleared on paper, there was more to be accomplished. Emotional recovery, restoring faith, and repossessing the aspects of her life that had been jeopardized. Her attorney put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Meri. You went through the storm, and you emerged stronger." The truth won out. Meri nodded, giving herself a small but triumphant smile. The courtroom that had seemed so much like a cage suddenly seemed more like a stage of redemption. She had made it through the lies, the accusations, the whispers, and the betrayals, and came out not as a victim, but as a woman who had regained her strength and dignity. In the outside corridors, journalists pushed for comments, and flashes went off continuously. Yet Meri stepped ahead with her head held high. With every step, it was a testament. She was no longer a victim of fear, manipulation, or betrayal. She had weathered the tempest and come out unscathed. The media firestorm might photograph her face, but it could not photograph the metal that had seen her through the trial. The rumors of scandal would eventually subside, but the teachings of perseverance, fortitude, and veracity would linger. Meri understood that she had not only asserted her innocence, she had also established a precedent for bravery in the face of adversity. As she walked out into the sunlight outside the courthouse, the wind against her face, Meri felt a deep sense of closure. The fight was won, the truth had come out, and she had survived the toughest trial of her life. She knew the road ahead would continue to have obstacles, but she also knew that no duplicity, no betrayal, no shadow of uncertainty could ever move her again. In the midst of lies, betrayal, and suspicion, courage and honesty are the best ammunition. Meri Brown had weathered the storm, and now she was free.